Hi, my name is Hector, and I will be talking about the Cold War. So, I will be talking about the general overview and major events with pretty basic info. So, the Cold War was a state of political and military tension after the Second World War between the powers in the Western Bloc, which were the United States, its NATO allies. NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and also others other allies. And we also have the powers in the Eastern Bloc, which were the Soviet Union and its satellite states. So here we have a top 10 of events that occurred during the World War, like the most important ones. So first we have the Berlin blockade and airlift. That was like the turning point in the post-World War II Europe. Then we have the Korean War in 1950, where things really got heated between the Soviet Union and the United States. So I don't know if you have heard about the Sputnik satellite, which was the first man-made satellite to be launched into space. This one was created during the Cold War between an intense rivalry about space between the US and the Soviets. Then we have the U-2 reconnaissance planes shot down in 1960 when a US plane from the CIA tried to spy on the Soviets, but they shut it down and led to a conference between these two countries. And it didn't go well for the US. Then we have the famous Bay of Pigs event in 1961 when the US tried to invade Cuba, resulting into a failure. Then we have Reagan visiting the Berlin Wall, uh, showing that he continued commitment to the people of the West Berlin. This happened in 1961 as well. Then we have another of the most known events of the Cold War, which was the Cuban Missile Crisis. This was pretty much the closest the US and the Soviets actually fight, but also included nuclear warfare. Then we have the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks in 1969. This wanted to slow the weapons race between these two countries. Then we have another well-known event, the Soviets invading Afghanistan in 1979. The US and the Soviets each back a different side, leading to the US boycotting the 1980 Olympics. I don't know if you have heard of that. Lastly, we have the reunited Germany in November 9, 1989, when the East and West Germany were finally reunited. And the East Germany was no longer communist. So this was the top 10 events that I found of the Cold War, and now we're going to talk the about what does the term Cold War really means. Okay, so a Cold War is a state of conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action, but is pursued primarily through economic and political actions, such as propaganda, acts of espionage, or proxy wars, waged by surrogates. Surrogates are typically states that are satellites of the conflicting nations. So they are like nations that are allied to them or under their political influence. Okay, so I'm going to talk about capitalism and socialism now. Capitalism is an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. The modern sense of this term was initially used by Louis Blanc in 1850 and Pierre Joseph Proudhon in 1861. And socialism is a range of economics and social systems characterized by social ownership and democratic control of the means of production. This involves political ideologies, theories, and movements that aim at their establishment. This term was created by Henry de Saint-Simon, one of the founders of what would later be labeled as utopian socialism. Simon coined socialism as a contrast to the liberal doctrine of individualism, which stressed that people act or should act as if they are in isolation from one another. Okay, so this is my interview. I did it to my father. He's 48 years old, and I interviewed him because I think he's a very experienced person and that has the sufficient knowledge to answer these questions. So you may now pause the video in order to look at the questions and its answer. Um, in conclusion, I think the Cold War was incredibly pointless and time consuming. I mean, it was 46 years of tension for no reason because the United States and Soviet Union spent billions on a war that never even happened, not to mention keeping millions of people in a constant panic. There was just no point in it, and I think that communism and capitalism could have just left each other alone. Finally, these are the bibliographic references I used to do this exercise. That's all. Thanks for watching.